Chapter 17. Haight Ashbury Love. With his wheat blonde, sweaty locks falling in knots around his face, Louie had become a permanent fixture on our living room couch. Working out his guitar riffs till late evening, the guy had no place to go. Yet oddly, he slapped me on a map and gave my desultory soul direction. Louie was a BYU graduate. Go figure. Music degree. Go figure again. Someone's friend of a friend. We had no idea why he was in our house, but no one seemed to care. I was a music junkie, so it was easy for him to seduce me with his guitar. He simply swayed to the rhythm of his song, and I was his. Slumped on the sofa across from him, my eyes widened with arousal as he strummed his fingers along the frets. I studied him. He studied me, his slow grin revealing a slightly crooked tooth. I repositioned myself on the couch, my mouth curling up to one side, when all at once this Haight Ashbury dude began strumming McCartney's Yesterday. I was a decent guitar player and loved anything Beatles, so before he left, I begged him to teach it to me. My intriguing friend surprised me by showing up on our doorstep the next day wearing cutoffs. While I fetched my guitar from my room, he pulled out his Gibson and made himself comfortable on the couch. The second I sat down, Louie inched toward me, his lanky thighs flattening the lines along the dark green corduroy cushion covers. At close range, I studied his face. When he smiled, the corners of his eyes crinkled and deep crescent-shaped lines edged their way around the sides of his mouth. He was older, perhaps a decade or so, making him even more fascinating. As Louie leaned in to reposition my fingers along the frets, all at once I felt the air shift and change between us. Heat rose in my cheeks and my body tingled as he softly rotated my finger for that perfect placement. My throat felt constricted, and I grappled with the suddenly complex task of inhaling and exhaling. To muck up the awkward silence between us, I dug the pads of my fingers into the guitar strings and recklessly thumbed a glissando. My newly mastered bar chord, a thuddy twang, graced the room. I searched my friend's eyes for approval. Shaking his bangs from his brows, he smiled indulgently. Then, in a beat, his smile was gone, his eyes drifting away from me. He looked pensive, as if he had escaped to a world of his own, enveloped in dreams that held him captive. Just like my dad, just like me. No wonder I felt so drawn to him. I lived in that world, too. I didn't care if Louie wasn't a double-take looker. He was mellow, confident, sexy. And his laid-back style was causing long-forgotten lower body twinges, reigniting a fire in my core. At last I had finally found my muse, the kind of guy who preferred deep, sensitive reflection over trivial matters such as a dusty end table or 2-day-old apple core left on the bathroom counter. After my lesson, while propping my guitar in its case, I suddenly felt Louie's hand on my shoulder. As I pivoted around to face him, he tipped my chin up, and I had no choice but to look straight into his warm, walnut-colored eyes. I could feel my burning cheeks. I knew they had to be red. "You're stunning," he whispered, his voice a sultry growl. I couldn't believe it was happening. He leaned in, his breath grazing my lips. As he kissed me, he was slow and thorough, our tongues dancing together so perfectly. The way he gently nibbled on my bottom lip brought my body to life, a tingling between my inner thighs that exhilarated me. Yet I was scared. It had been years since my last kiss, which was in the back seat of a bus in the middle of Nevada. Now this man was bringing it all back almost too fast. My head and heart wanted two different things. I missed the feeling, yet I was overwhelmed. Louie was a practical stranger. Then just like that, he said he had to go. Well, that solved that. Now I just needed to know how to deal with my little pink Ferrari's revved-up engine. Later that week, when my roommates were out, I invited Louie to our home. We danced barefoot to John Coltrane on the rustic brown shag carpeting. I awkwardly followed his lead while taking in the scent of his strawberry shampoo. And did I smell ragweed? My insides rose and collapsed as my friend gently unraveled his long mid-back ponytail and pulled me into his warmth. A heavy chain glinted from his opened collar, exposing his chest hairs. I wanted to trace my fingers around the chain, but I felt timid and inexperienced at those types of playful gestures. As he held me to his chest, his heart thudded like a kick drum in my ear. Although I was way out of my element, all my inadequacies melted away. I couldn't believe I was in the arms of an older man, a gifted musician, in fact, who saw me as stunning. He was my sanctuary from the wind and the rain of a world so cold, so unaccepting. I was no longer the one-date wonder, at least for that moment. At last I was beautiful. At last I was loved. Oh, how I longed to remain beneath his Mary Jane-scented canopy, but Louie ruined it all. Right then, he glanced at his watch, said he had to be somewhere, and poof, he was gone. Again? Just when I was feeling so worked up. How could he leave me in this bothered state? Did he have another lover? Could he possibly be married? I hankered for his touch, for his earthly smell. I didn't care if he smelled like weed. I hoped he wasn't married because I wanted him. Unlike many college co-eds, I held tight to my virtue. So when my hippie love lit a fire in my groin and then left, I didn't know how to handle it. Then I remembered the flexible shower head in the bathroom. Guilt? What the hell was that? I whisked toward the bathroom, quickly undressed, then stepped into the tub. Snatching the hose from its holder, I laid back on the porcelain and spritzed away all the sexual tension. In my head, I was already making future plans. Marrying Louie would be my ticket out of here. That night, as I settled into bed, I skipped my prayer routine and slept like a baby. It was pouring rain when Louie called me a few days later and invited me to his place for lunch. When I arrived, he offered to heat up a peanut butter sandwich in his little toaster oven. Smoke filled the space between us as he retrieved my charred sandwich from a shitty secondhand broiler and set it on a plate in front of me. This is when I learned the literal meaning of the catchphrase, starving musician. That was the last time I saw him. To my utter grief and bewilderment, he simply vanished into thin air. After 3 encounters, I was madly in love. My dreams of a man to have and to hold forever, especially one as fascinating as Louie, were crushed. A few weeks later, one of my roommates gave me a tip-off. She said she spotted my hippie love in the supermarket kissing a guy in the bread aisle. The thought of Louie as a bisexual was a horse pill to swallow, and it hurt going down. Allowing myself to become vulnerable with someone I barely knew was becoming a pattern. I was the desperate, needy, one-date no-wonder. I was certain I could never be happy alone. I had not yet to meet my inner woman who was strong, smart, and capable. On my sunken mattress, alone and inconsolable, I coiled into myself. And just like when I lost Johnny Valentine, I entered a death wish. But once I healed, I finally took control. I was never going to allow another Louie into my life again. I would be empowered.